Welcome back to the second video in this Reading Through the Gospel series. Last week, I introduced this series talking about how we're going to take the next 20 weeks on this channel, a series of videos diving into the gospel, the story of God with us, the story of Jesus Christ. And as I said last week, the majority of this series will be focused on the Gospel of Mark, the 16 chapters within that book. But for the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at just the beginnings of the other 3 gospel books. This week, looking at the beginning of the book of John. So the Gospel of John, like the book of Mark, it doesn't really have a nativity story. Instead, it starts with this beautiful prologue centered on this character of the Word. And it goes a little bit like this. We'll read through a little bit of it together as we dive in today. It goes, in the beginning. Those are the first words, which is really cool because those are the same first words in the book of Genesis, in the beginning of the Bible. So there's this very clear setting being placed right at the beginning of the book of John here, that this prologue will be focused, at least for the start, on the beginning, on creation. So it starts, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So like I said, we have at the beginning of this book this character known as the Word. And we can look at this now and understand this to be Jesus Christ, and knowing the Gospels are about Jesus. And as we continue reading through this, but we'll pretend we don't know who this is, that this is this character known as the Word. And we have some very important theology here at the beginning of the Word was both with God and was God. So in verse 2 clarifies, says, he was in the beginning with God. So we have this interesting dynamic that there is this character of the Word at the beginning of creation, before anything came to be, that we have the Word, who is both with God and was God. This interesting, Trinitarian dynamic that we understand the Word as an element or an aspect or a person of the Trinitarian God. It says, all things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. So we have the Word as this creative being, and what he creates is, it says, what came to be through him was life, and this life was the light of the human race. So the Word, this character of the Word, this creative being, brings forth life and light. In verse 5, we have just this beautiful uplifting phrase here. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The light as the Word, as they interchange those terms for this character. The light being stronger than the darkness. The light overcoming, being more powerful than any darkness. And now we have the second character introduced here. A man named John, verse 6 here. A man named John was sent from God. He came for testimony, to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. So we have the second character of John, who we can understand now to be not the writer John here, but John the Baptist, as we might refer to him. And it clarifies, he was not the light, but came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. So we have here that John the Baptist, as we know him, is going to be coming into the world before this character of the light will be coming after him, and stronger than him, more important than John the Baptist. Verse 10 here, the kind of setting almost shifts, where we move beyond creation as it was at the beginning, where we're talking about the Word existing at the beginning of time. But then it shifts beyond creation into time, where it says, he was in the world, the Word, the light, and the world came to be through him, but the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, but his own people did not accept him. So this section here, these 2 verses are almost a foretelling of what is going to happen when this Word, this light, comes into the world. That the world is not going to understand, and they're not going to accept the greatness and the wonder of this creative being that is the Word. But those who do accept him, verse 12, but those who did accept him, he gave power to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who are not born by natural generation, nor by human choice, nor by man's decision, but of God. So those who do accept this Word, who do believe in him, will be given power to become children of God. And then verse 14 here is what we can look at as almost the nativity story of John's gospel, just this brief phrase, and the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Interesting in the footnotes, it says the made his dwelling among us is literally translated to pitched his tent among us. That this Word, this powerful creative being, is coming to be one of us, to, quote unquote, pitch his tent to be with us. And we saw his glory, the glory as of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. That we have this other interesting dynamic, this relationship of the Father to the Son. And verse 15 almost seems kind of like out of place, as John testified to him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, the one who is coming after me ranks ahead of me because he existed before me." So we have John testifying him, which comes in the next section here. Then going back to the word, verse 16, what does it mean for this Word to become flesh and dwell among us? It says, "From his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace." This referring to, as it will be clarified in the next verse, a new covenant. The covenant that was given to Moses in the Old Testament, that grace will be replaced with this new grace. It will be surpassed by this new grace that the Word brings. And as verse 17 says, because while the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Here in verse 17, we finally have a name for the Word, and that name is Jesus Christ. And finally, verse 18, no one has ever seen God. The only Son, God, who is at the Father's side, has revealed him. So we have this relationship of the Son, Jesus Christ, to the Father of God, and that as the Son, the Word, Jesus Christ, comes into the world, becomes flesh, and pitches his tent among us, by doing so, he reveals to us God, who we have never seen before, but God chooses to bring this Word into the world, to send his Son to us, to reveal himself, to give us a look into his glory. Cool stuff here at the beginning of the book of John, and the rest that goes from there is, John testifying to Jesus, his baptism, going into his ministry. The rest of it is pretty similar to what we'll see as we dive into the book of Mark. But John's gospel here, the beginning and really throughout the book of John, really focuses on the divinity of Christ. Jesus being the Word that was in the beginning with God and was God, really focuses on who Jesus was as divine. Because as we go forth in this series, reading about the story of Jesus' life, it's easy to see him too much as just another human, as just another person. But we have this good context here from John that Jesus was the Word, the creative being who is with God, who was with God at the beginning. And this helps us to see Jesus for who he truly is, as fully human, as fully divine, in his earthly life that we read through in the next 3 Gospels. So that was the beginning of the book of John. Leave your thoughts and your comments in the comment section below. And feel free to join us next week as we dive into the beginning of the book of Matthew.